Welcome to E-commerce with Coffee, a podcast powered by Amber Engine, where we share e-com secrets for brands over your favorite brew. We start with the caffeine and then leap enthusiastically into behind-the-scenes e-com insights that led to the success of our guests. I'm Nate Svoboda, and I'm about to serve you up the best. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome to today's episode of E-commerce with Coffee. In this episode, I am speaking with Jaryd Krause. He's the founder and CEO of Buying Online Businesses and the host of the podcast. And he helps you to successfully grow, buy, and scale online businesses with coaching and mentoring. Now, if you're like me and you've ever thought, I really want to run a business, but I don't have an idea of, what to do to start one. I think you're really going to love this conversation in particular. So, Jaryd, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Nate. Really appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to have our conversation today. But before we dive into things, I imagine you're an extremely busy person. I have to imagine caffeine plays some role in your life.
I'm actually really good with caffeine. I never got started on the coffee train and stayed away from it. So yeah, it's just, I think what keeps me going is good exercise and good food.
Good. Well, hey, those are two very, very good things. And if you've never started drinking coffee, then you might as well, not even have the habit begin. Well, I guess diving right into it, I've heard you mention elsewhere that, when you started out, right, there weren't really a lot of resources available for people that wanted to potentially buy businesses that were already, making money, that already had an online presence. Would love if you could just give us a little bit about your background and really what brought you down the path you're on today.
Yeah, good question. So it was really tough. I used to be a plumber and I hated my job just because it was just time intensive, labor intensive, and I disliked my boss coming towards the end of it. And so I would run away from work and go and travel. And I'd do that, go travel for 6 months, come home, work for 6 months, go travel for a year, and then come back and work for 6 months and rinse and repeat that method until I came to a point where I was like, this whole coming back to work thing is not good for me, and I want to work out how I can make an income online. So I was living in Egypt at the time, working as a dive master, scuba diving, and just taking people on guided dives all day, every day. And I thought, all right, I need to keep this traveling thing going so I can surf and travel around the world. And so I literally jumped onto Google and I typed in how to travel the world and make money online. And so that was back in 2012, end of 2012, start of 2013. And from there, a lot of people were starting their own blogs, travel blogs. So that was me. I put my hand up and thought, yeah, cool, I'm going to become a travel blogger and try to start my own online business. And it was really, really hard. And then I thought, maybe it's just blogging. Maybe I'll start an e-commerce business. And then I tried to start an e-commerce business and I built it. And like they said, if you build it, they will come. That is not true. You need to know what digital marketing is, especially these days. And I had no idea what that was. I got all these products, all these things. I'm ready to go. This site's looking good. Got all the products and just made little sales. And then I came across this stat that 90% of all startups fail. And I thought, wow, okay, if 90% fail, maybe I can go away and buy a business that somebody else has built and started and is in year 2 or year 3 of starting that. They've put in all the hard work. They've gone through the startup phase. They've passed that 90% failure rate. Maybe I can come in, purchase it and be the operator and reap the rewards and then also scale it on top of that. And that's what led me to buying businesses.
No, I love that, right? I mean, I think that there's a lot of people who have that entrepreneurial spirit who a big barrier to them is they don't have that idea that they feel confident in moving forward with, right? I kind of joked about it at the beginning, but I feel like there's probably a large number of people who really strongly feel that way. I guess, can you talk us through the process? If you've identified a business that maybe, you'd like to purchase, right? There's a certain amount of due diligence that you'd want to do, right? Can you just talk us through sort of the process? If you, Jaryd, you've identified a business that you kind of want to scope, walk us through your thought process and sort of that framework.
Yeah, sure. That's a great question. Before we get to that, you're spot on about people thinking about what's the right idea for me and the business that I want to create. And I think there's two types of businesses that should be made for two different types of people. I think one, if you have an idea that you already know that's really good and you're really passionate about it, and that product or service does not exist, and you are willing to stay in the business for a minimum of 10 years to build that, and you're super duper passionate about it, then start a business. But if you don't have an idea and if your goal is just to make an income online, I think it's the worst thing you could do is start a business, because the 90% failure rate, coming up with an idea that's good enough, that's going to stick and keep you passionate enough to stick with it, to get past that 90% failure is really hard. Why not go away and buy something? So I think there's two differences. People that just want to make an income, don't start a business, just buy something that's already got an income. Versus if there's a product that you're dying to get out into the market because it doesn't exist, and you're passionate about that product that's going to help and serve so many people and change people's lives, then create it. Otherwise, start one. In terms of when you get to the point like, maybe I'll buy one, before you get to the due diligence and the things you need to check off, and my thought process about what I should be looking at within that business, is you need to identify a few key things. You need to identify how much capital you have to allocate to purchasing a business, and then what type of business model would suit you best for your income goals and your lifestyle goals. Income goals can be how much money you want to make. Lifestyle goals is how much time do you want to spend in the business, and what type of work do you want to be doing within the business, which will help you determine what business model to go with. Once you know that, then you can start to go away and narrow your focus down to looking at that business model at that price, which saves you a lot of time, saves you a lot of money from not going and buying the wrong thing. And then you can vigilantly focus on those types of businesses, and then understand the true value that those businesses are worth at that time in the marketplace, so you can understand which one is more valuable than another and has a good price. And then when you get to that point, then you go, this is the right one that I need to start doing due diligence on. Then you can start to go through the checklist. Did you want to interject then, or do you want me to start to go through some of the things on the checklist for the due diligence?
I would say I'm going to hold my question off till after.
Cool. All right. So when you come to doing the checklist or the due diligence checklist, there's a few different things that you can check depending on the business model as well. What's most common, and this is pretty broad for most, is you need to get financial proof, right? You need to get proof of the finances. So you need to get a screen share or video proof, or if you can in person, somebody walking you through. That's hard to do, but usually it's a screen share or a video of somebody going through their merchant account and showing proof that the business is making money. So you need proof of income. Then you need to check out the traffic. You need to see if the traffic's trending up, trending down, sideways, and most importantly, why. Why is the traffic doing what it's doing? And if it's growing, then great. But if it's decreasing, then why? Understanding this why will help you to prevent it from decreasing if you do become the new owner. Or if you're understanding why it's growing, then you can do more of that as well. So understanding the traffic. If it's a content site or some type of online business that's using SEO, you need to understand the SEO profile of the business, where it's getting its traffic from different search engines, why, and the performance of this SEO. You also need to be looking at the marketing, very, very critical. This is mostly for e-commerce businesses. You want to be looking at how much they're spending in ad spend, on what channels, what's their performance. So what's their cost per lead, what's their CPA, cost per acquisition, what's their CLTV, customer lifetime value, and then you also need to be understanding their email marketing funnel, how that's working, what are the conversion rates there. And you want to understand this before you purchase the business, so you understand the scalability of the business and how well those digital marketing campaigns are performing. You also want to understand how good is that person who's running those digital marketing campaigns at digital marketing in itself. Can you provide and do get the same result as them, if not better? Or can you hire somebody who can, that you know, like, and trust, that can do that as well? And then you need to check, verification of the owner, proof they own the business. And then there's other things within each of those broad aspects of due diligence that I just mentioned there.
No, I appreciate how clearly you just laid that out for us. Now, I have a couple of questions on that. First thing, imagining this depends on how quickly the owner wants to sell the business or how quickly you want to buy it. Over what period of time should you be doing this due diligence, right? Because if you find a business and you love it, you don't want to make an emotional buying decision, right? So I guess it probably depends, but give me your thoughts.
Yeah, it's a great question, because most people do make an emotional decision when investing and when investing in an online business as well. And that's my mission, is to slow people down and prevent that from happening. Because I'll tell you, if people listen to this podcast right now, they go to website brokers, they type into Google website brokers, and they go away and look at these online businesses for sale, they're going to see how much they cost, how much they're making, and then how little time is required to run those businesses. And they're going to be anxious to buy one of these businesses. And it happens to me all the time, where people email me and say, Jaryd, I've found this business, I need to buy it, it's the business that's for me. And they're not in my community, they've never paid for me, I've never heard from them before, and they say, help me buy this business. And I say, look, I can help you, but you gotta go through the process and learn a little bit. They're like, no, just look at the business, look at my due diligence, and I need to get onto this business before somebody else buys it. And that is a massive mistake. And almost every single person that sends me a business like that, they get a quick education in why the business is so risky and actually not right for them. So back to your question, is what's the time frame? Most of the time gets put in at the start of sharpening the axe. You know the analogy, if you're going to chop a tree down, spend 90% of the time sharpening the axe, 10% to chop it. So that's where you need to understand the education around the different business models, how much capital you have, what type of business you're going to buy, and doing due diligence on a few other businesses. That can take, depending on how hungry you are. Time is not the best way to measure it, because some people can get done a year's work within 3 months. And some people can get a lot done within 3 weeks. I've had people buy businesses within 3 weeks, within 3 months, and then people that bought businesses after a year. So it really is determined by how much input somebody is prepared to put in. But I would say if somebody has done due diligence on, 10 to 20 businesses, they're going to start to get a really good idea of what a good business looks like. And that's the hard part, is like just grinding out, doing the due diligence. I mean, it's a lot quicker than starting a business, but sometimes people just don't want to do the work at all and just want to click their fingers and have the business in their hands. And you can do that, but you may be buying a lemon.
Yeah, no, and that's absolutely true. And I love the analogy you used, spend 90% of your time sharpening the axe, 10% of the time cutting down the tree. I'd only heard that very recently, but I think that that's applicable in a number of different scenarios, right? Not even just here. And I think that you may have just, I think this might be your answer, what you just said about making an emotional buying decision too quickly. But outside of that, what would you say are some of the most common mistakes that entrepreneurs that you work with, make when they're ultimately making the buying decision or doing their due diligence?
Good question. When the biggest mistake is having the wool pulled over their eyes, so to speak, where they don't see the risks and they just see the opportunity and how much the business is making, and they get emotional about it. That's definitely one of the biggest mistakes people make, because, like I said, it's easy to see, all right, this business costs $100,000 and it's making $2,500 a month net profit, and people are like, $2,500 net profit. If I was to spend $100,000 on a property, I'm not going to get that. The returns are really good, in between 20 to 30% return on your investment per year. It's really easy to go, I need this, and disclude the possible risks. So one of the biggest risks that people miss is single source dependency. What is single source dependency? Single source dependency is when you rely on one traffic source. So say all of your traffic's coming from Facebook and you're doing digital marketing on Facebook, or all of your marketing and paid ad spend is on Facebook. Facebook changes the algorithm and decide to just go, sorry, we're disapproving all of your ads and then we're going to cancel your account. It's happened to me multiple times in my businesses personally. So many other people that I know of as well. And I've almost lost my whole business because of that. Same with Google. Google could change not shut you down, but they could change the algorithm and how your ads will perform. Somebody messaged me last week, and I'm doing a video on this later on my YouTube channel today, is somebody said, look, I've got a lot of friends, spending $18 million in ad spend a year on Facebook. They've been doing it for 3 or 4 years on the same campaign that's profitable. Now it's no longer profitable on Facebook. Why is that, Jaryd? I don't know the real answer to this, but that's single source dependency. So it can be from one traffic source, one marketing channel. It can also be single source dependency on one client or 2 clients in terms of revenue. So if you've got 2 clients and you're running an agency doing digital marketing for e-commerce businesses, you've got 2 clients, 2 big clients, they may pay you 50 grand a year each and you're making 100K. Awesome. You're on the 6-figure train, but you lose one of them, which can happen very quickly. You lose 50% of your income. So that single source dependency is a big thing. Single source dependency for e-commerce businesses with products is a big one as well. For example, say you're selling wallets or watches, and you've just got one product, right? One really good product, and they decide, the manufacturer says, look, we're out of business. Or they decide, nah, we're just excluding this item because we no longer want to manufacture it. We're not profitable on this item. Like, you've got no business because you've got one product. That said, a big mistake is having too many products, but there's some risks there that we can chew on, and we can dive into more of those if you want. There's always a lot of mistakes people make.
I absolutely love what you just said a second ago there, right? The idea of don't put all of your eggs in one basket. We have a lot of companies that we even speak to who, they have most of their sales coming from Amazon, or they only have their website and they're not focusing on retailer partnerships and other marketplaces. So to your point, it's a services company deals with the idea of, well, we need multiple traffic sources, multiple channels to focus on. So I appreciate you highlighting that. Now, thinking about this idea of, multiple channels, right? Digital, just in all sense of the word, has become more prevalent in recent years. So it seems like the boundary or the differences between an online business and an offline business really are kind of dropping. Do you see any differences that still remain in how to run an online versus an offline business?
It's a good question. There is some differences. It really
doesn't even really exist anymore, honestly.
Yeah, that's right. Like, it depends. Like, if an offline business is like a cafe or a restaurant, but if we're talking about e-commerce, there's not, like, the difference is when you've got a big brand, focusing on branding and getting people into the store is a big thing, and running branding campaigns, versus e-commerce online. It's just like all about the CPA, right? The CLTV, the how do we get optimize as much as possible. It's a tough one to answer. Are you asking about the differences between the two, or?
Well, yeah, I was really asking if you even see if there are any differences between the two, right? Because even if you're a cafe, right, an offline business, you still really would benefit likely from having, a social media presence, from dealing with online channels. So it seems as though those boundaries have just been dropping more and more in recent years.
Yeah, if you're an offline business and you're not a manufacturer that is just crushing it and has a lot of distributors, then yeah, you're silly not to have an online presence. I used to work for restaurants and used to do sales and help them grow their businesses. And the biggest thing was get a social media presence and get people from social media into your doors.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. Now, you talked about this a second ago, and we can get lost in acronym land, right? There's business to business, B2B, B2C, B2B to B2C, right? There's so many. Now, that said, if you could, are there any business models or types of businesses that, tend to be more profitable than one another, or maybe, they're riskier? I guess, talk us through if there's any differences or commonalities you've seen there.
Yeah, it's such a good question. So it depends on the size of the business, will be dependent on the risk. It's like anything, you get what you pay for, right? If you're going to buy something cheap, you're probably going to get something cheap, and it's probably going to have more risk. You buy something that's a bit more established, usually it's going to have a lot less risk. That's a very general statement, so we need to do our due diligence. But when it comes to different business models in terms of risk and how passive they may be, it depends on how much team and the business may have, and also how much how good their systems are as well, right? How good are their SOPs? So traditionally, people that are looking at buying a business from $10,000 to $200,000 is, I suggest them buying, and they have no idea about digital marketing, I suggest them buying a content website, which is a blog that makes money from ad revenue or money from affiliates revenue from affiliate sales, and or a combination of both, right? Ad revenue and affiliate sales. If that person does have digital marketing skills, say in Facebook or Google or whatever it is, and they can implement that into an e-commerce business and they're confident running that, then they've got leverage in that business. And I think it's a good idea for them to go away and purchase that type of business if they're skilled and have confidence, and then build the SOPs around that to make that more passive. But that said, content website business usually are more passive, the most sort of passive type of online business model. And then you kind of move into the SaaS and membership style business models, where software as a service, they're selling a tool. It could be like an accounting software, or it could be a membership, like say Netflix. People pay to get access to content, pay per month. They can be quite passive businesses, because you don't have to always produce a lot of content for people to be happy, and you don't have to always be changing the SaaS tool every single day. If it's a tool that works really, really well, you can make some changes every year, depending on what type of tool it is and what your clients need. So it can be a quite passive one. But e-commerce business is a bit different, where if you've got multiple products and you've got multiple sales channels and you've got multiple funnels and you're spending a bit of money on marketing, you've got to wear a fair few hats. And if you don't have a team, then it's not as passive. So I would say the most passive is content, and then e-com being the last, until you get to the higher tier. If you're getting to the 7-figure businesses, then it can be more passive with an e-commerce business for sure.
Yeah, because theoretically, right, there are people that, fill your gaps. They do something better than you. They're better digital marketers than you, or they're better at logistics than you. So you hire and surround yourself with people that are smarter than yourself, right? I forget where I heard this quote, but if you look around and you're the smartest person in the room, you should probably look to leave the room, right?
Yeah.
So I love that. Now, you really kind of just addressed this a little bit, but I don't think I'm asking the same question again. So how many of the entrepreneurs that you work with, generally speaking, go into the business completely hands-on versus really aspire to have a more hands-off, passive form of income? And I know that's specific to the clients and the people you work with.
Yeah, I'm very beginner focused. I would say about 80% of the people that join my community and want to work with us they will be beginner stage, where they want to do the work themselves. Obviously, they don't want to do the work themselves. They would rather be able to afford a team and afford a business that has more systems and more automation, but they're starting out at a different stage and they need to sort of work with me to help them build the team and build the systems to make it automated, make it really passive, and still scale at the same time. Then when you got that other 20% where, I have people come to me all the time. Hey, Jaryd, I got $1 million. I got 3 million. Can you buy me a business and run it for me? And those are the people that, or they just want to buy a business with a team, and have my help buying the business. They don't want to spend their time looking for a business. They don't want to spend their time doing the due diligence. They just want to buy a business that's good. They want to pay somebody to do that. So you got those two different tiers.
Yeah, and so I appreciate that. Now, thinking, and you may have done actually a podcast episode about this, for people that don't have, $1 million sitting in the bank ready to go and invest in a business, what are some of the avenues for just an average person to get the funds to actually make that investment?
Yeah, with buying an online business, it's still, the reason the ROI is so good is because it's still not too many people know that you can buy an online business, right? It's just not a common thing. That said, great ROIs and not being a common thing means it's harder to get financing to purchase an online business. If you're in the States, you can use a thing called the SBA, Small Business Administration Loan. And obviously you need a little bit of skills. You need to be a good business owner or entrepreneur to get approved for that. And you need a few other things as well. You do need a little bit of capital, but mostly it's people that can save. So that's why a lot of people start out around the $20,000 range or $10,000 range and up, and start off there, and then they buy a business, quickly get some results, sell it, buy a bigger one, or hold it and buy a bigger one with the returns they get. And usually they'll keep their day job until we replace their income. So I got people that are replacing their income now, leaving their jobs and scaling their businesses at the same time. But they do start off at the smaller range, and getting the funds is really about having good principles and practices put in place to be able to save that money and not overspend on unnecessary expenses like lifestyle expenses that may not be absolutely necessary. And then once somebody is good at saving, usually they're going to be better at having a loan or having a business. They've got some of the foundational things put in place. So yeah, most people start off with just cash buy, and then I would say maybe 15 to 20% buy with finance. But yeah, it's very limited options with buying an online business and finance.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. So it's nice to know that there are some opportunities, depending on where you live, and obviously some different things about yourself, whether you have a track record of entrepreneurship. But to your point, people need to have good, skills in their lifestyle, right? Or good practices in their lifestyle, right? You have to be willing to save money to make money, or so to speak. I feel like I've heard people say that before. Jaryd, this has been a very interesting conversation, but the last question I'd really like to ask, and this is a bit broad and open, what would you like to leave our listeners with, given everything we've talked about, right? I mean, obviously, hopefully the people that are still listening to us talk are interested in the concept of buying a business, running a business, but what would you really like our listeners to take away from the conversation?
What I'd like them to take away from the conversation is, let me ask you, what are the listeners? Is it people that are wanting to get started in the business, or people that already own an e-commerce business before I give the answer?
I would say that the mixture of people listening are e-commerce managers, business owners, and early stage entrepreneurs. Yeah,
cool. This is going to be applicable to everyone. What I would like to leave everybody with and tell them is that the grass is not greener on the other side. So when you listen to a podcast, a YouTube video, read a blog post, read a book, what happens is people get some inspiration, they get some ideas, they get some creativity, and they get excited, and they can get distracted by the shiny object syndrome. The way to make an income or get results in business and in life is to have hyper focus at the start. And a lot of people will this is my conundrum with a lot of people that I work with, is they will come in and they'll want to get a result, and they'll want to get it in a short time frame. If they don't get the result, that this method, this vehicle is not right for them. It's not true. And I was speaking to a client yesterday about digital marketing. I said, look, spend 3 months and thousands of dollars in ad spend on this channel with this actual digital marketing service before you just write it off, because you have to buy the data, you have to get through the process to, start to see some results here. So most people do this in their life and in their business, and they get distracted. And they, for the people that are wanting to make an income online, is they will choose a vehicle, they'll do it for 6 months because they heard somebody they achieved this result in 3 months or 6 months. If they can do it, I can do it. And they try to apply that to their life. If they don't get the result in the 6 month time frame, they're out of there. Next vehicle, right? Next. And they keep on doing this, hearing a case study from somebody that got a great result. Yeah, I can do that. And then they do it again over and over and over. And they wonder why in 10 years time, they haven't even built an online business or bought an online business, and they're not making an income online. And they go around in circles. Yeah. That's for people that are starting. For people that are owning an online business, it's the exact same thing. Exact same thing when people want to grow a business. Is they hear someone in a YouTube video or a podcast talking about a thing that worked really well with their digital marketing in their business, and they go, oh, I need that. I'm going to go away and market on Instagram. Or I need to build this email marketing funnel. And they build all these things half-assed, excuse my language, but they heard somebody. I made $1 million by building an email funnel, and after 3 months, I made $1 million. And they go, cool, all right. If they can do it in 3 months, I can do it in 5 or 6 months. I'm going to apply that to my business. And if they don't start making money straight away, they go, oh, this didn't work. And they built this thing half done, and then they hear another thing on another podcast and go away and do that. This is not the way to grow a business. It's not the way to grow a business. It's the way to destroy your business. I help people scale from 6 to 7, even 7 to 8 figures in e-commerce. And how you grow your business is not external. You need to grow your business internally. And what I mean by this is not the external data that you get from inspirational podcasts, maybe like this, or a YouTube video or something like that. It's from getting the data from within your business, because your business is telling you exactly what it needs to grow. So you need to tune into the business, you need to listen to it, and need to do more of what's working and less of what's not working, and then you grow your business. So all the external growth is not the way to go before you buy a business or start a business, and even within your business. So I call it inside out growth, and that's what I'd love to leave people with.
No, and a lot of very great things that you just touched on there, right? So first and foremost, a lot of people are looking to buy a business because they maybe don't want to go through the effort of starting one and the 3 to 5 to however many years it may take to even get to a stage of making money. But then they go ahead and buy a business and they don't realize, well, it still takes time, right? You can't be patient. Rome wasn't built in a day, so to speak, right? And then also the point that you just made about it's not just about growth and acquiring more data. It's actually about investing in your business, listening, like you said, and actually figuring out, based on the indicators we have, the data tells us or gives us ideas of what we should do, where we should go. Let's actually act on that. But you need to make sure you have either yourself or people on your team who know how to read and interpret that information, right?
Yeah.
Which I'd imagine is maybe not always the case.
Yeah, this is the hard thing.
Yeah. Well, Jaryd.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry. There's a bit of a delay.
No, that's great. We can cap it there.
Well, Jaryd, this has been a fantastic conversation. Where can our audience get in touch with you if anything we've said has resonated, or if they would like to look into buying an online business? Yeah, sure. You can check out buyingonlinebusinesses.com. So it's buyingonlinebusinesses, which is plural, businesses.com. And then, if people want to email me, Jaryd@buyingonlinebusiness.com. Check out, got the podcast,
got the YouTube channel. Reach out if anybody's ever got any questions about anything. I'm happy to help.
Awesome, Jaryd. Well, thanks for being such a great resource to everyone who, is interested in capitalizing on, all the commerce that's happening online. But we look forward to having you on for future conversations.
I look forward to it too. Thank you so much, Nate.
That's it for this episode of E-commerce with Coffee, powered by Amber Engine. If you haven't gotten your fix yet, be sure to get more e-commerce brand secrets on our website at amberengine.com. And don't forget to subscribe for more episodes.